Good evening. Welcome to this Tuesday, April 17th meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call roll. And may I remind commissioners, please make sure your microphone is lighted green and speak into the mic for the record. Commissioner Wiggins.
Present.
Commissioner Armstrong. Commissioner Bowie. Commissioner Crane. Commissioner Fizer.
Present.
Commissioner Meiske.
Present.
Commissioner Urquia.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present.
And Commissioner Faulkner is present. We do have a quorum. We have no personal appearances scheduled this evening. One item on consent agenda, minutes of our March 20th, 2018 meeting. And I would entertain either a motion to accept consent agenda or to accept minutes of the March 20th, 2018 meeting, as you wish.
I will move to accept the minutes from our March 20th, 2018 meeting.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Wiggins to accept minutes of our March 20th, 2018 meeting. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, and therefore none opposed, no abstentions. Nothing this evening under old business, so that takes us right along to new business. Case 18008, the annual review of the growth management plan. This case will require a public hearing, and I think before we open the public hearing, we should probably have staff report, correct? Sound good? So, Mr. Cataract, Mr. Grass, as you wish, if you would please present case 18008.
Thank you, sir. If you think back to 2013, back when the growth management plan was adopted, it was adopted with the condition that staff takes an annual review and kind of reevaluates the effectiveness of the plan, how up to date with the most recent planning trends and ideas throughout the planning world the plan is. So here we are for the 2018 annual review and report of the growth management plan. The report is divided up into 8 sections, so I'll kind of touch on each of the 8 sections and kind of go through some of the highlights, and if there's questions at the end, I'd be more than happy to go into some greater detail. Excuse me, some greater detail on some of the items that are included within the report. So page number 2 starting just gives kind of an overview of why we complete the review every year, like I said.
If I can pause you for a minute and get Mr. Zer's advice, would I be better off to go ahead and open public hearing now and get those comments, or?
We simply need to make sure we open the public hearing for opportunities from the public to be able to comment at this time. You can open it now if you're inclined to do so.
After Mr. Gress's presentation, then.
It's just as fine.
Fine. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gress.
So I was saying page number 2 just gives a brief overview of, like I said, kind of why we do the review every year, just to make sure the contents of the plan are up to date with the most recent planning trends. Moving on to page number 3, you'll see the first section there, the assessment of activity throughout the city. So I've kind of highlighted 3 different some of the more recent planning trends and kind of what we've done to keep Raymore kind of in the loop throughout the planning world. So one of the recent national trends is the study of changing demographics and kind of the impact that that's going to have on communities throughout the nation. And if you remember back to, I believe it was March of last year, we adopted the Raymore's Community for All Ages Master Plan through our cooperation with Mid-America Regional Council. So we continue to take an active role with that group, participating in monthly meetings with different communities throughout the region that are also part of the Communities for All Ages initiative. So it's always good to hear kind of what other communities are doing in comparison to us and kind of how we rank through other communities throughout the region. Another recent trend is the expansion of different types of housing opportunities, different types of housing options and housing styles throughout communities. And if you think back to our March 20th meeting of this year, the Planning Commission reviewed an ordinance that would allow accessory dwelling units in all single-family residential zoning districts. As I mentioned, you guys made a recommendation of approval for that for City Council, and that will move forward to City Council at their May 14th meeting. So they'll have an opportunity to weigh in on your recommendation and give a formal approval or denial of that ordinance. So we'll keep you all posted on that as it moves forward through Council. One of the more recent ones that we've kind of been working on here is the idea of walkability and pedestrian safety throughout communities, and kind of how, you know, sidewalks and trails are connected to the different areas of the community, the different amenities that the city offers. And one of the things that we worked on in 2017 was applying for a walk-friendly designation, which the city had applied for before. We unfortunately did not receive it that year when we applied, but they provided us with some really valuable feedback that we took into consideration and made that application again last year. We're still waiting to hear back on that. We were supposed to hear back at the end of March, but I think they had a lot more applications than they were expecting, so I think the review time has taken a little bit longer. So again, we'll keep you all updated on that should we hear back in the next couple months or so, hopefully. Other than that, the plan overall remains current and relevant to all the current major planning practices relevant to a growth management plan. The next section is the assessment of future land use and transportation plan, trying to determine if they're adequate to accommodate the future growth of the city. If you've noticed throughout the city, there's several projects that have been going on that are either under construction or currently nearing completion. Several of those are significant road projects or community facility projects, just adding to the stock of you know, roads and facilities throughout the community. So with those road connections going in different facilities, the time is becoming you know, more and more relevant to evaluate the transportation master plan included in the growth management plan, as well as the future land use plan. One of the things that staff has started working on is an inventory or analysis of our existing land use and kind of trying to figure out how that pairs up to our future land use inventory to try and figure out what kind of gaps, you know, may exist in that plan. You know, where are we now and how are we going to get to what's in our future land use plan, you know, 10, 15 years down the road. So staff will be following up with that at an upcoming meeting with a formal presentation of kind of the results of that analysis, but just know that we're working very hard to kind of understand what our future land use plan should look like versus what it currently looks like. The next section is the assessment of progress towards and implementing the goals, objectives, and action steps that are outlined in the plan. So I've included several things here. I'll kind of touch on some of the highlights of some of these. Number one, the economic development team has been very busy over the last couple of years, making progress towards essentially all 5 of the goals that are included in the growth management plan that relate to economic development. Our ED team, which consists of various department heads and staff throughout the city, we hold bi-weekly meetings to kind of discuss the status of projects that are underway and kind of the efforts that are being made to attract other business throughout the city. A major goal last year and the year before that, and as well as this year, is the Raymore Gateway project, which is right there at the intersection of 58 Kentucky Road, right there where the old Ryan's used to be and the China Star Buffet is right now. So staff has been working with a number of people throughout the city and current owners of that property to keep making that property a little bit more marketable and trying to gauge the interest of the development community and trying to see a redevelopment or at least some improvement of that site. And one of the major aspects of that is the construction of Kentucky Road, the realignment of Old Kentucky to realign it with the light there on 58 Highway for various reasons, for access to the site, safety improvements, and just overall marketability of the site. So we're working very hard to acquire the land to make that road connection happen. So we'll be working throughout 2018 to hopefully bring that project forward. Just across the street there on the other side of 58 is the Raymore Marketplace. That was a pretty big milestone last year with the addition of 6 new businesses going in there. They're pretty close to being leased up with 4 restaurants and then 2 retail tenant spaces there. So a pretty successful project. So we're happy that it's still moving forward and it's still really successful. And then aside from those 2 sites there, the city continues to market and kind of evaluate the marketability and effectiveness of other sites throughout the city to kind of gauge interest in development and redevelopment of different sites throughout the city. And in addition to that, the economic development and ED staff, we continue to meet. I've been lucky to work with Mr. Tapp, our ED director, on what he calls our business retention and expansion efforts. So, every month we'll meet with 2 or 3 business owners throughout the city and just kind of gauge their interest on, what is it that the city does really well, what are some of our strengths, and what are some of our weaknesses that either promote or do not promote economic development in the city. So I've really enjoyed working with him to kind of get an insider's view of what, business owners look at when they want to come locate to a city, specifically in Raymore. So those have been really successful, and I look forward to hearing from more business owners throughout the community. Number 2, in support of the Quality Neighborhoods Goal number 1, ensuring that all properties throughout the city are maintained to the highest degree possible. Staff will be working on this year the 5th annual review of our property maintenance code through our code enforcement staff and community development staff, just trying to make sure that properties throughout the city are maintained the way that they should be, and that their appearance is kept up very nicely. The City Park Board and City Council continue to provide funding for park projects and open space projects throughout the city, which is furthering the goal of Quality Neighborhood Goal number 5, the red parks. In 2017, there were several park projects that were proposed and approved, with TB Hanna improvements, different park amenities being proposed in the planning process there, as well as Hawk Ridge Park, which was approved by the Planning Commission in 2017 for the amphitheater, walking trails, and a clubhouse there. So that'll be moving forward in 2018 as well. Community connectivity goal number 1, developing a common place for community gatherings, with the Centerview event space across Municipal Circle here was a really good event space that opens up a lot of opportunities for not only the Parks Department to host additional activities, but also a space for communities to meet for neighborhood meetings. Have been really popular there, baby showers and different events throughout the community, as well as the Raymore Activity Center, which is currently under construction. That'll be nearing completion hopefully towards the end of this year, which again will open up more opportunities for the Parks Department to increase programming activities and things of that nature, as well as just a nice gym space for the residents to utilize. Number 5, expansion of the sidewalk network and trail network keeps moving forward through the city's various sidewalk installation programs. In 2017, Public Works installed more than 3,500 feet of sidewalk throughout the city. So just making sure that the sidewalk connections exist and that they are accessible and maintained to a high degree. In addition to that, there was also several improvements that were made at Memorial Park and improving that trail and making the connectivity between the school, the park, and the neighborhoods a little bit safer and a little bit better. So I think that's pretty well getting close to being wrapped up. I think there's some site work that's being done maybe around the trail once the weather is a little more consistently nice, but just like I said, keeps the goal of connecting the neighborhoods and parks, keeps that goal moving forward. Number 6, on an annual basis, the Planning Commission is asked to review previous non-residential developments to kind of see the quality of how it turned out and to see if there's anything that we would have done differently. So as I mentioned, with the Raymore Marketplace and several other projects underway, I'm sure it'll be, the time will be approaching that the Commission will have to, we'll ask the Commission to go through and just reflect back on some of those projects and see if they turned out how we envisioned them, if there was something else that we should have looked at more a little closely. So definitely stay tuned for that as those projects start wrapping up this year. Number 7, the implementation of Quality Neighborhoods Goal number 4, maintaining a safe and secure city. The police department has been very active again in engaging its citizens, and the Citizens Police Academy was very successful this year, and I believe they intend to do that again in 2018. So a very successful program they have going through the police department. And they've also partnered with a community business, Dave's Bike Shop across the street. They recently hosted a bike rodeo, bike safety rodeo, just make sure kids are aware of safety rules, how to wear a helmet properly, how to ride your bike, where to ride it, and things of that nature. So that was also a very successful event that was kind of a partnership at the police department as well. Moving on to the next section, the assessment of the plan's ability to support council's visions and goals. In 2016, the City Council concluded its strategic planning efforts and finalized their strategic plan earlier in 2017. So with that, a lot of the goals that are included in that really parallel what's included in the growth management plan. So over the next couple of months, it'll be important to kind of see what we can do to the growth management plan to sort of tie those together a little bit closely, or if there's additional steps or action steps that need to be added to kind of keep the strategic plan moving forward. And a kind of a big success to that was the community conversations that we had back in 2016. So now that we've completed the strategic plan and a lot of the projects that were talked about during those conversations, I think it's the city's plan to kind of hold a round 2 of those community conversations in the fall of 2018 to kind of say, hey, here's where we at last year, here's what we've done since, what are the next steps, what do you guys want to see next? So it'll be really exciting to see kind of the results of those conversations, so stay tuned for those as well. The next section, any potential gaps that are addressed in the plan. Staff has not identified any potential gaps within the plan. As I mentioned before, we're making pretty good progress towards a lot of the goals that are included in that plan, as well as the strategic plan. So as long as progress is being made towards a number of those goals, the plan remains pretty relevant and up to date. There's no potential gaps that staff sees from our eyes. Any updates on any other plans adopted by the city? As I talked about a little bit, the City Community for All Ages Master Plan, we've made several steps towards implementing the goals that are included in that plan, such as the accessory dwelling units, expanding the use of those. We've also talked about researching universal design and trying to capitalize on the amount of homes that are being built throughout the community and trying to see if there's ways to maybe improve the design and construction of those homes to make them a little more age-friendly or at least accessible to people of all ages and all abilities. So that's one thing that we'll be working on here in 2018. And then I talked a little bit about the park developments. One of the goals that was included in the Community for All Ages plan as well was the idea of universal design. So as the Parks Department is working on Hawk Ridge Park and TB Hanna Station, one of the things that they're doing is working really close with community development staff and other organizations throughout the region to make sure that the playgrounds and the facilities that they're building in these parks are accessible by people of all ages and all abilities, whether you're a retired individual, whether you have some sort of disability. We want to make sure that they're able to have the same experience on that park as anybody else would be. So it's really exciting to see the work that the Parks Department's doing to make that happen. The next section, other issues that might be relevant to the Community Development Director or Community Development Department. As I mentioned, the Transportation Master Plan with the amount of road projects and road connections that are going in last year and throughout this year, the time is appropriate for the city to evaluate that plan and ensure that it meets the needs of the growth that the city can expect over the next 5 or 10 years. So we'll be looking at that this year as well. Speaking of real estate and commercial economic development, there's a huge need for mid-size, small commercial buildings throughout the city, whether it's a multi-tenant building or a mid-size box store. There's not a whole lot available right now throughout the city of Raymore for that type of user. So it's really important that we start to evaluate where that type of development might be appropriate and kind of figuring out the steps that we need to take to make that happen to start attracting some of those businesses towards the city. As I mentioned, our ED department does a very good job of evaluating kind of what our existing businesses think, kind of what our strengths and weaknesses are. So it'll be really important to kind of play on that feedback and understand kind of what the city can do better to keep attracting more businesses to the city. And then with the changing demographics and the kind of the work that the city's done through the Community for All Ages program, one of the goals that was included in that was the formation of a Community for All Ages committee that would sort of help evaluate different projects on how they relate to livability and communities for all ages and aging population. So one of the goals that we have is to form that committee. One of the things that we've talked about, we have an existing task force that we use to kind of get through the evaluation process for that program. So we're going to start with that group, but one of the things that we've talked about is getting is perhaps some youth representation. So working with the school district to get just a different perspective from what the youth might think that the city could do better, or things that they enjoy about the community and things that they enjoy about new projects. So we'll be kind of reaching out to the school district to see if they have any a pool of students that might be interested in local government or have an interest in serving on a board or a commission that we put together. So definitely stay tuned for that as well. And then recommendations for action on the plan within the next 12 to 24 months. There's 4 here that we've kind of talked about already, but I'll just reiterate them here before we wrap up. Just incorporating the goals and objectives of the city's new strategic plan, just trying to tie these 2 plans a little bit closer together. And then include an existing land use map and update the undeveloped land use map in the growth management plan. A lot has happened since 2013 when this plan was adopted, so I think just updating the plan and making sure the contents of the plan are most up to date is really important as well. So we're working on bringing that update forward as well. And then I mentioned the land use inventory that staff has started working on. Once that's finished and we have sort of a presentation for the commission to consider, we'll be looking for recommendations from you all on what needs to be updated on that map and how staff should proceed with amending that map within the plan. And then updating the street classification map to reflect the proposed changes of the realignment of Kentucky Road that I talked about with the Raymore Gateway project. That's been on our transportation master plan for some time, and we're finally making some pretty good progress in making that connection happen. So it'll be important to, whatever changes might happen, to make sure that change is reflected on our transportation master plan. And then future work products, I covered these pretty well in detail previously, but here at an upcoming Planning Commission meeting, you should expect a city land use ratio analysis presentation, just to kind of gauge where we're at right now with our existing land use inventory, and try and figure out kind of where we're at with our future land use map, and make sure that that's is accurate and that's where we want to be in 10, 20 years as development activity keeps happening throughout the community. And then number two, just the strategic planning update. I imagine staff will have a number of goals and recommendations for you all to consider on changes that might need to be made for the goals within this growth management plan to better align the goals that are included with that with the strategic plan. So you can expect two of those products at some point throughout this year. And then again, topics for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. As I talked about, as we start looking at the transportation plan and the future land use map, it'll be important to get some feedback from the commission and hopefully maybe some other staff as well to kind of see what changes need to be made and feedback we can get from you all to make those changes throughout the plan. That would conclude staff's report. If you have any questions, like I said, about any specific section throughout the report, I'm more than happy to go into greater detail, but that would conclude staff report at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gress. Before I open the public hearing on case 18008, annual review of the growth management plan, we normally request speakers to limit their comments to, I think we could go 5 minutes without any problem tonight since we have such a crowd. And please give us your name and address for the record. And as I admonished commission a little bit ago, speak into the microphone and make sure it's turned on green so we can hear you. So having said that, I'll open the public hearing on case 18008, annual review of the growth management plan. Would anyone from the public like to speak? The podium is yours. Oh, darn. And seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and open the floor for discussion by the commissioners.
I have a question.
Commissioner Fizer.
I just have a question about, you talked about the city needs more mid-size tenant space. What qualifies as mid-size? I mean, like, what would be an example of what that might be?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure what the different classifications are of different styles of buildings for, different tenants. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, I've been working really closely with Matt Tapp, who's our economic development director, and working with him, I've learned a lot, actually. Mm-hmm. But as far as what tenants are expecting, I don't know the specifics of that. I just know that's something that he's talked about time and time again, is that's the type of store that retailers and tenants are looking for. Mm-hmm. I can certainly get more information and share that with you. I just don't know the specifics of the size that we're talking about.
Kind of examples. So.
All right.
Okay.
So would a mid-sized tenant, for instance, be one that could occupy C2 zoning?
Yes. I would say anywhere between C2 and C3. C1 would be a little bit smaller, I would think. Not necessarily mid-size. I would say that type of development would fit.
I'm thinking a mid-sized tenant could occupy C3, but C2 or higher.
Correct.
A small tenant could occupy C1 on up.
Correct. The uses that would fall in that would more than likely be a C2 zoning classification, I would say.
I don't know that that's the best rule. Commissioner Wiggins.
I think that kind of took care of some of that, but I was curious if they knew, because I mean, obviously a space can be built to be, warehousing, manufacturing, office space. You mentioned retail, commercial or other. So I just didn't know if they've given any hint into, I watched the council, not the meeting, but why can't I think of what the other work session? Thank you. Had a lapse there for a moment. And I watched the economic development. It was very informative, and so I just didn't know. They were talking about like the building that Matt Davidson and Lonnie Branson built out here, and people have interest in those kind of things, but also just across the road here next to Price Chopper, somebody expressing interest in potentially multi-building. So I just didn't know if the what in that mid space is that primarily, is that going to be a small office space and insurance and attorney or whatever, or just from a perspective of is that a 10 to 12 employee expectation kind of thing, or is that a 50 to 100? I don't know, and I just didn't know if there's any.
I think what you just described with office space, things like that, would be somewhere C0, C1, smaller than what I'd consider mid-sized.
Okay, so that's why I didn't know if that's more the manufacturing side. I know down south, they've talked about, whether it be one large building for a manufacturing type facility or what. So I just didn't know if we knew of what kind of level, just from a curiosity standpoint, of what is interest in what classifies, what might be a type of, is it an office space, is it a manufacturing space, is it a distribution center?
Sure. I think that the basic answer is all of the above. I know that Mr. Tapp is working with all different kinds of retailers and office space users, medical office, professional office, really the whole gamut. So I can't really give you a specific answer of the one type that we're really looking to target, but do know that he's working with all different sectors of the commercial economic development profession to attract as many tenants and businesses as possible. But like I said, I'd be more than happy to speak with him, and I can update you all at the next meeting at the specifics of what he's trying to get at with that goal. I just don't know that information off the top of my head this evening.
Okay, I guess the reason for my question was more of for anybody in the public that would watch a video like this, are they anticipating a building like was recently been built out here on 58 that's a 3 to 4 tenant, professional building kind of thing, a medical building, or are people, if they hear this conversation, are they thinking, a massive, 30-foot tall, no column, span building that's going to have, 200 workers, or is it a place that's, a white collar, 20 people in a building? So I was just trying to kind of put something in that people would be able to easily relate to. So I just didn't know what that might. Sure. If you had any information.
Remember, and I'm not going to dig the paragraph out right now unless you really want me to, but remember that it's not only size, but it's also use. There's a table in here. I know it's here.
It was more of just kind of
so it's
somebody hearing if it just was what it might entail.
It's not a real clear-cut question, but you raised some good points. So if I'm not interrupting anybody else, question for staff. When I read few existing spaces available for mid-sized tenants, I would certainly agree. I was wondering, would the old Orscheln building be considered mid-sized? It's kind of large, but it's certainly not as big as Walmart, Price Chopper, Sam's, for instance. But that's a building that has sat empty for longer than I'd like. Sorry.
The Orscheln building presents challenges beyond a simple discussion of what can fit in there.
Oh, thank you for that. Okay. Maybe not the best example in the world. Thank you, Mr. Zur. All right. Other commissioners? Commissioner Meiske? Mayor Turnbow? Commissioner Urquilla?
Chime in a little bit there to follow on what David was talking about. Because I sit in on many of those meetings with Mr. Tapp. I'm part of that economic development team, and a lot of it, is speculative in nature at this point because we just can't talk about the individuals we're having those conversations with. But I would echo what he said, is there's kind of a gambit of things. There's professional office spaces, other retailers that are looking at Raymore very seriously from, I would say, like 10 to 12 employee operation, as many as 50 or 60. They're all looking at us right now, and it depends on the capabilities that we as a planning commission can offer them with regard to the zoning districts what the landowners are willing to offer right now with regard to cost of land, because that can be a roadblock as well. And so we're working with those landowners, some better than others, but we are working with those landowners, and it's a very exciting time because Raymore is now getting recognized as the place to plan the future for, and so we're with regard to the I-49 North Cass Parkway, there's a lot of activity from large-scale projects to small that are looking at that as a potential home. And then, of course, the Gateway project, even the land across the street, catty corner from on the other side of Sunset and 58 Highway, there's professional officing that's looking at that as a potential area for growth. So we're in an exciting time. It's just there's so much going on right now, and no ink or names on paper yet that we can announce. And I'm hoping maybe by the summer, Matt and I can make those announcements. But it's a whole range of things, isn't it, David? I mean, it's really exciting. We just get them to come to the table is the hard part.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Turnbow. One quick question. You actually did a fine job of answering several of my questions in the presentation. Top of page 8, so this is under recommendations for action on the plan in the next 12 to 24 months. Number 1, incorporate goals and objectives identified in the new city strategic plan into the GMP. So I guess just to make sure I'm on the same page, could you clarify what do we mean by the new city strategic plan? Do we mean something that came from those community discussions, not another round as planned later?
Correct. So a product of those community conversations that took place in 2016 was the strategic plan that was finished and adopted late last year. And as I mentioned, it's very similar to the growth management plan, and that a lot of the goals and objectives that are within that parallel the contents of the GMP. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we were getting at with that, first subject right there was trying to find those common threads between those two plans and figure out if there's any changes that need to be made to either strengthen those plans, or if there's something in the GMP that's repeated in the strategic plan. Really just trying to find out how those two plans relate together and kind of how they can work together to further the goals that are included in both of them.
I kind of felt like Planning and Zoning Commission was maybe trying to play catch up in this case to the 2017, but then there was discussion about fall of 2018, and so it's a living document.
Correct.
It's always I know it's a struggle to keep, and other plans adopted by the city, it's a struggle to kind of try to keep everything in synchronization. Okay, thank you for that. Other questions, comments from the commission? Let's see. All right, there's probably a helpful hint. Yes, Mr. Ketterat. Mr. Zer.
I just wanted to make a general comment first. Just it wasn't necessarily covered in the presentation, but it's just looking ahead. Several of you have been through previous efforts to do a new growth management plan. We did one. We adopted one in 2004. Then we adopted the one we're currently using in 2013. Right. So we had about a 9-year gap, between those two plans. Yeah. What we are proposing, looking ahead. Since the 2013 adoption of the plan, the city manager does set aside funding every budget year in preparation to set aside for the next plan to be prepared. What Mr. Gress and I have talked about, what we're looking at is the 2020 timeframe for doing the complete overhaul of the plan, going through the same process that we do when you adopt a new plan. Probably would start on that in 2019, but look towards the 2020 deadlines. So we've been doing the annual reviews that Mr. Gress did tonight, but looking forward, that's what we had in mind for coming up what would truly be a new plan for the city. So the funding that is set aside helps us with some of the community meetings that we would have, some of the outreach that we would do. Staff and the Planning Commission have a huge role in the plan. We don't just have a consultant come in and do the plan for us. We've taken a strategy of just using their expertise where it's needed.
Right.
When we went through this project back in 2013, we did not have the benefit of a city planner. So this, hopefully 2020, we have that still, and I think that will help us, do a lot of this ourselves, which is always the goal, to kind of keep it in the community and just use that expertise when we can. But it wasn't mentioned, I just wanted to identify that as our target looking ahead.
And if I may add to your last comment, it's always a little bit disconcerting to have someone who doesn't live in Raymore come in and tell us how they think the plan should go. Although I think in past efforts, we've had very good support from consultants who really did not do that, but simply facilitated and dragged it out of us, if you will. So no complaints there. But it is, I was kind of wondering this evening, I knew we weren't quite there, but that's good to note that we are coming up probably for a major revision. And it's always interesting because, as we know, Raymore keeps growing, keeps changing. Okay, other comments, questions? Mr. Zur, Mr. Cataret, something to add?
I was going to kind of ask both the commission and Mr. Zur as far as what we were looking for out of the presentation this evening, whether it could be a motion for acceptance of the plan, acceptance of the report, I guess.
The report, sure.
It's been set as a simple review for tonight, and I'm sorry, should have waited for the chair to recognize me.
Mr. Zur, please.
If you're looking for a motion, my suggestion would be that you'd have a motion to accept the staff's recommended changes and then schedule a time for presentation of changes based upon the future land use map and the transportation master plan following the results of the land use inventory analysis, and then set the matter for consideration by this commission at a future work session meeting.
Right, and kind of to add what you just said, so top of page 8, there are 4 items listed, and I don't think I heard you actually say one of them, Mr. Zur, and I guess that was street classification map updates, and then going backwards, future land use, existing land use, and incorporation of goals and objectives in the new city strategic plan.
I believe that's going to be incorporated into the analysis of the transportation master plan, so the updating of the street classification map and all of that.
Okay, well, I skipped over transportation plan because that's not listed on that page. So, yeah, we hit the same thing from a different side, didn't we? Thank you, Mr. Zur. At any rate, we may struggle a little bit getting the motion down exactly right, but that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Do we have any more comments, questions about the 2018 GMP annual review? No, we good? So I think I'd entertain a motion to accept the staff report on 2018 GMP annual review and direct staff to proceed with, I'm tempted to just call them the action items. That's legally probably insufficient, isn't it? Mr. Zur, where'd you find?
At the bottom of page 8, if you look there, you might find the staff recommended changes. So it would be a motion to accept staff's report and to recommend that they proceed forward with updating the future land use map and transportation master plan, depending upon the results of the land use inventory analysis, and then to schedule a time to update this commission in a future meeting on the same.
Okay, and I promise you I was listening, but did you just mention incorporation of goals and objectives from the city strategic plan? And And if not, what do you think about that? To me, that's an open item also, top of page 8. Not-
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think
Not,
that's
not
fine.
really covered in the bottom. So we're kind of a combination of the items at the top of 8 and the bottom of 8.
Yeah, I would say that your 2, 3, and 4 are all included in the bottom.
Okay.
Your 1 is not, does not have a specific reference in the bottom.
Okay, so 1 at the top, bullet at the bottom. I think that would cover it sufficiently. Thank you. Okay, is anybody brave enough to make a
Sure,
motion on
I'll
this?
take a stab at it.
Thank you, Commissioner Urquia.
I move that we accept accept case number 18008, annual review for growth management plan as it's been presented by our city staff this evening, knowing that we will be revisiting a formal opportunity to accept their findings once they have presented to us, that they will incorporate the goals and objectives identified in the new city strategic plan, as well as updating the future land use map and transportation master plan, depending on the results of the land use inventory analysis, and that those will be presented to us at a future date.
What do you think, Mr. Zer? Okay,
I'll second that,
thank you.
just so he doesn't have to repeat it again.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out how can I skim right over this. All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Meiske, to accept case 18008 as presented by staff this evening, annual review of the growth management plan, with staff to incorporate goals and objectives identified in the new city strategic plan into the GMP and update the future land use map, transportation master plan, depending on results of the land use inventory analysis, all this to be presented at future commission meetings. Okay, I saw some heads nodding yes. Are there any questions, comments about the motion? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. 6 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions, and thank you very much to staff for the hard work that went into this. And Mr. Zer, thank you for the good advice. We got a motion passed. Okay. Back to the agenda. That'll take us on to City Council report. Mr. Zer, if you would, please.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Commission. It's a pleasure to be able to provide the City Council report for this evening. I have 2 items to report from the same night. We did have a March 26, 2018 City Council meeting that was scheduled. However, that meeting was canceled, and all of those items from the agenda were then moved to April 9th, 2018. On April 9th, 2018, we had 2 meetings. One was the original council's regular meeting. At that regular meeting, the only item on the agenda was declaring of the April 3rd, 2018 election results. At that time, the election results were declared by the city clerk, confirming that council members Abdelgawad, Townsend, and Holman will retain their current seats, and replacing Councilmember Derek Moorhead, who previously sat on this fine commission, with Councilman Tom Serco. So that is the change that occurred with regard to the regular meeting of the City Council on April 9th. Just an update for who your representatives in the city are. Following a short reception on April 9th, after the swearing in of each of those council members, the council did have their they had a special meeting wherein they conducted their regular business. During the course of that meeting, the only identifiable thing that I can think that would be of pertinence to this commission is something that I'm sure Mr. Caderet will be happy to discuss as well. Mark aerial photography project. So if you're looking at some of our older photographs in our staff reports and materials, you're going to see those being updated with current photographs that will be taken or already have been taken while the leaves are off the trees. And so hopefully we will have updated information for you all to review in future staff reports. That's the only thing that I really saw. There are street preservation projects and curb replacement projects that might be of some interest, hit and miss around the city, but I don't think that will directly impact upon this commission's decision making. That is the conclusion of my City Council report.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Zer. Mr. Carteret, Mr. Gress, we'll hear the staff report now.
Yeah, thank you. I will start, then hand it over to Mr. Gress. Looking at upcoming schedules in your pipeline, the monthly report, it identified 2 cases for May 1st. The applicant has requested those to be moved to May 15th. So at this time, we don't have any items for your May 1st meeting. We would recommend that meeting actually be canceled. May 15th is going to be a full agenda. So with the council's okay, we could look to cancel May 1st. We'll have those 2 cases on May 15th. We have a couple of additional cases as well, and that's why I say that will be a full agenda for us, public hearing.
Fair
I expect
warning.
public to be at that meeting.
Does anyone on the commission have any objections to canceling the May 1st meeting? No. Sounds okay to us.
Good. Okay,
We'll
thank
go
you,
for
sir.
May 15th. Thank you.
Just to update the commission, Mr. Gress and I will be attending the American Planning Association Conference. So that'll be Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Commissioner Armstrong is absent tonight. Her absence is tied to her attendance at the conference. She had registered, had planned on going, but is unable to. So it was just something we just found out. So unfortunately, because of such a late hour, we can't have somebody go at her place. So that was unfortunate. She sent her regrets for that and for not being here this evening. But Mr. Gress and I will, go to the conference and present to the commission an update on the things we learned. So we look forward to
appreciate
that. That concludes my part of the staff report. I'll have Mr. Gress talk about public works projects.
Oh, great. I'm sure Mr. Rokas appreciates that.
Thank you, sir. Yes, in his absence, I did ask Mr. Rokos to provide me with a couple updates on some of the projects that are going on. Contractors are currently out working on Johnston Drive, the connection over to Dean. This week, they're working on the culverts over the stream crossing, so that project is moving forward. The Foxrose Drive connection over to Dean, they'll be applying fly ash and stabilization to the ground tomorrow and placing curbs throughout the week. He estimates that there's about 2 to 3 weeks left in that project, and it'll be wrapping up here pretty shortly. The 155th Street Bridge is going through council right now, as Mr. Zur mentioned. He estimates that once that passes through council, it'll take about 3 months to complete that project. So I know several residents throughout the community are looking forward to that connection being made. Several curb projects and street preservation projects are currently as well at the council level. They held good neighbor meetings about the lots that are to have sidewalk installed on them last week. So there's a couple lots on Park, Maple Street, and Park Court throughout the city that will be receiving sidewalk and curb improvements this year. That is all I have from the Public Works Department.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Gress. We'll open the floor for public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? This is your last opportunity this evening if you wish to speak to the commission. Thank you. Well, we're glad you're here anyway. We appreciate your participation in our meeting. And seeing no public wishing to comment, we will move ahead to commission member comment. I think I'll take my life in my hands and ask for a volunteer. Who'd like to comment first?
Me.
Commissioner Meiske.
Sorry about this. I got a couple of questions, and you may not be able to answer this. I was hoping that the Public Works would be here. Hawk Ridge, the whole park that's over there in Remington, right? Mm-hmm. When's that going to start? Or do we have plans on that?
We do have plans on that. Currently, Public Works Director and Parks Director and staff are going through bids that were received, working through the details of those projects. But we still anticipate construction on those projects this year. Okay. Hawk Ridge Park. TB Hanna Station, plans are a little bit behind that, but still going through the planning process as we speak, just finalizing what will be the details of that project. So both still scheduled for construction 2018.
Okay. My next one, thank you for that. There's a road that connects, I guess, I don't know how to call that. What do you call that, Lucy Webb, as it comes around, and there's over there by Benton House and
The outer,
Walmart.
just outer road.
Oh, okay. Is that road on any kind of plan to be completed?
And well, it turns into Belton. So,
Well, no, it goes from behind Benton House, which is in Raymore.
right.
All the way behind Walmart.
I'm
think
sorry,
that's the Johnston Drive.
I'm sorry.
Oh, is that what that is?
It would be the future extension of Johnston Drive
Okay.
from
Other
Dean
drive.
Avenue.
All right. thank
Okay,
you.
okay, I wasn't sure. So
So
that's-
at this time, aren't we, we're just connecting Johnston Drive from Fox Haven to Dean and no further west?
That's correct, sir. And
Okay,
the
okay.
development, as it happens in the Hunt Midwest project, Timber Trails will construct that final piece. But it
Okay.
is on the plan to be completed.
Okay, well, that's kind of personal, because my mom just moved in Benton House, and that's the road she wants to go down to get to Walgreens. So I told her I'd ask. Okay.
And you did very well, thank you.
I do want to thank the staff, did a very good job on the growth management plan review, so I do appreciate that. And that's all I had.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Meiske. All right, do I have another volunteer? Commissioner Wiggins.
I will also echo the appreciation. Thank you for the update on the growth management plan. Very informative. Obviously, time to come, but I do look forward to 2020 and the new version. I can't wait to see what some of these maps might actually look like in the future. So looking forward to that, but thank you for your information.
Great, thank you. Let's just move on down. Vice Chair Pfizer.
Well, I always like to plug city activities and things that go on. So first, I want to say that the Easter egg hunt was a lot of fun, and got my annual picture with the Easter bunnies, so that was good. And I want to remind people that the summer scene is coming up. I know it's a little in advance, but it's June 9th. And if anybody's an artist or knows an artist, I believe this week is the last that you can reserve a spot there. So I just want to throw that out there and also remind everybody that you can get your Adirondack chair and decorate it. And it's a lot of fun. And that's my city plug, so thank you.
You did well, thank you. Commissioner Urquia.
I just want to thank the city staff. You guys always do a good job walking me through and helping me understand what I need to understand to make motions, so I appreciate it. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you. Mayor Turnbow.
If we adjourn right now, we've got 8 minutes to make it to the food truck event at TB Hanna Station.
Was that a hint?
Thanks to staff again. They do a lot of work, and I know Jim and David are just absolutely wonderful to work with on a daily basis up here. So thank you for your work on that, and I don't have anything else tonight. Thank you.
That was great. I did want to thank staff. I appreciate the insert, you and your staff. I thought that was very well written and a very good reminder, and actually, you know, I hope that we generally follow this advice. So it was well put, and we appreciate those educational opportunities. Mr. Zer did a fine job of commissioner training. I believe that was last meeting. But, you know, these little tidbits kind of help us keep things in focus. So I think that's all I have. Thank you, staff. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Urquia?
Yes.
And second?
Second by Wiggins.
Wiggins. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we are 6 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions, and adjourned this evening.